Okay, so this is my CPT in grade 12. I did this in partners. I'll tell you what everything I did and my partner did. This, we called it PNG Rush um, because all images were PNGs. And okay, yeah, the title was kind of placeholder, and then we ended up handing it in with a placeholder title, whatever. This is our CPT. It was a boss rush game and a top-down shooter. The first thing we did was a menu screen that you could actually play with for no other reason than we didn't have a menu screen. We thought, hey, that looks pretty fun. A start button where if your mouse hovers over it, we thought it was important in this game that every time the player does something, they need feedback on everything. So that's one of the things we did. This is the game itself. The player character, if you've seen my MRunner game, or, well, it's just a bunch of like geometric shapes. You've probably seen this before. Anyway, so this is a tutorial, and the blocks were borrowed from Legend of Zelda and Super Mario Bros. Just because we're not artists. WASD to move. You can move in 8 directions, up, down, left, right, and diagonal. The tutorial is designed to teach the player that. Let's see, diagonal. There's a blink ability where the player can blink forward. Well, forward in any direction, but they cannot blink through walls. The goal of this tutorial is to reach this teleporter. However, we knew that some players would already, especially for playtesters, they already knew how to play this game. So if they already knew how to shoot, we put these walls in place so they can skip right through it if they wanted to. This is the shooting tutorial, arrow keys to shoot. So it's essentially a twin stick shooter on a computer that doesn't have twin sticks. So we make do with arrow keys and WASD. Anyway, you can pause the game with P, and all the blocks, they have a certain number of health. They all explode with this particle effect. Again, we thought that it was important that players get feedback on what they do. So every time a bullet collides with something, there's a particle effect. Every time a block breaks, there's a particle effect. Every time projectiles collide with something, there's a particle effect. And you can teleport past projectiles. We didn't want the player spamming this, so if you notice in the bottom left corner, there's a cooldown, so the player can't just spam that. Same with parrying or meleeing. So when I say parrying, I mean like you can just smash bullets before they hit you. It's not particularly balanced. Oh, and another thing, you can't actually shoot. A lot of players try to shoot that when they play test, but I literally added this tutorial in like 2 days before it was due. I wasn't going to make that a new enemy type, so whatever. This is the first boss, and we thought it was really funny because we thought that like Kahoot music sounded like boss music. So like, hey, wouldn't it be really funny if you had to fight like just Kahoot? And so that's what we did. The Kahoot boss has 3 different possible behaviors. It uses the easing equation to move to one of 4 defined nodes on the arena. In phase 1, it shoots in 4 directions, up, down, left, right, and it will generate a random beach ball. And the beach ball, it's a vector. It's actually a random vector. It doesn't follow the player. It bounces around. If you touch it, you lose health. There you go. And you can actually shoot these beach balls, or they will explode on their own based on a timer. So the Kahoot boss is very predictable because it only goes to 4 like standard locations on the map, so you can kind of just sit here and melee it for a lot of damage. Most players didn't actually figure that out, but it's fine, whatever. The background changes color. We actually couldn't use RGB for this. We had to use a different type of like color system just to make that happen. So this game actually just switches color systems. Alright, second phase. All bosses in this game are multi-stage. The Kahoot boss is 2 phases, and in its second phase it gets more aggressive. It shoots projectiles in 8 directions instead of just 4. It moves faster, and the beach balls are now shot directly at the player instead of in random directions if it decides to shoot. There we go. Let's see if I can just whittle down its health. We also designed this game to be like brutally difficult, which was not fun for playtest. Why isn't it shooting? There we go. It's all based on RNG too, so you know you can get lucky if you would like to shoot. There we go. Again, RNG is difficult to balance for, but you works. Let's see if I can kill it. Almost. There we go. All bosses have a death animation in which all collision is suspended so the player cannot die after they've already defeated the boss. And just spawns a teleporter against the next boss. Before we start the next boss, so my partner did the next boss. So the music choice is on him. Yeah, so this is the Duolingo bird. We also thought it would be really funny because the Duolingo bird was a meme at the time we were making this. The whole like thing about the Duolingo bird who like was homicidal. He didn't study like. Anyway, it shoots flags. This basically is projectiles. Player is restricted to only the ground, and we show that visually with the separation of the sky and the ground. Oh, and this is phase 2 of the Duolingo bird fight. If you notice, the hitbox of the bird is actually a square. Square collision here. Yeah, you can't turn those attacks. But we thought it was really funny. Like a two-player homicidal Duolingo bird. And yeah, it's fun. There we go. The teleporter normally spawns where the boss is, but because the boss is above the play area, the teleporter will spawn at its Y coordinate. And then our final boss. Yeah, so this one I made and I put probably the most time into. We call this one the screen because it's a rectangle and it displays different images, so we're like, yeah, screen. It basically just follows the player and moves up, down, left, right, or diagonally based on where the player is. And if you notice, every time a bullet collides with the screen, not only is there screen shake, there's actually a bit of chromatic aberration. So every element on this fight is actually 3 different elements. There's one blue, one red, and one white. And the blue and red are actually behind the white element. And whatever the white element shakes, the red stays still, and the blue moves half as much. So you actually see, it looks like it creates the effect of chromatic aberration. And yeah, phase 1, it just follows you. I'd also like to point out that in the background, all the stars are randomly generated. We want to create a parallax scrolling effect, and it just follows the screen. We just thought it looked cool. There's no like other reason behind it. Okay, phase 2 it gets more aggressive and starts moving faster. We also introduced an attack where it shoots you in sets of 3. The sets of 3 mean that you cannot parry them because you want to ramp up the difficulty, even though players barely parry. Given more time, we would have fixed that. And there's another phase of the boss fight. There we go. So it slows down and blows 2 less damage. Fortunately, meleeing and parrying does more. So we wanted the players to figure out that you can melee it and then run away, or melee it and teleport through. That's why we left it. It's actually not that fun to play if you just try shooting it. The ideal way to play is melee escape. Anyway, what's the last phase? This is the final phase of the boss fight. It's bullet hell. And it's just a bullet hell boss. What it does is it finds a vector between the player and the boss. And it actually only fires one stream of projectiles at them. The rest of them are just shot in random directions, just to make it look more interesting and look more difficult than it really is. So you found that players like the illusion of difficulty more than actual difficulty. And yeah, a smart player should be able to navigate this. It's actually not that challenging, but players like it. Anyway, yeah, so it's just a bullet hell boss fight. The boss can either move around. Player can either move around or shoot at it. Alright, there we go. as you can see, the screen, it changes its face based on what it's going to do. We wanted to telegraph every attack because it's obviously unfair if a player doesn't see what's coming. And we also added scan lines just to create a visual effect because we wanted to theme it around screens. Anyway, that's the end of the game. It just takes you back to the title screen, but this time it's glitched. This was a last minute addition. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, so going over the code, so my partner did the entirety of the level editor, and the level editor, what it did is it stored every level as a 2D array. Different numbers would correspond to different types of blocks on this grid, where 1 would be a brick, 2 would be destructible, 99 would be a teleporter. So these are tutorial levels. We also use different blocks to differentiate between different images, even if they'd have like the same properties. So all odd number blocks are blocks that are entirely solid, you can't pass through, though they'd have different images. So 7 were invisible. This is the the Duolingo fight. 9 was trees. The screen fight was just plain. And then the Kahoot fight, we used 4 different blocks for the 4 different Kahoot symbols. What it does is it basically just traverses whichever array it needs to set up the level editor. Everything else was done as its own separate object. How the game works is it first, well, it just creates all these array lists. It loads up images, loads up the sounds, and then the way processing works is it works off of 2 methods. The first one, setup, runs once, loads everything. Second one, draw, is a loop that runs 60 times a second, and that's everything about the game. I know this could be a switch statement, but whatever. A different game state would determine whether it's setting up a level, so running the level editor and stuff, or resetting variables and that stuff, or it's actually running that game state, whether it be a tutorial level or a boss. And all the calculations are done in the draw method, right? So if you're supposed to draw the walls, it draws the walls in this method, right? If you got to draw your HUD, your health bar, your boss, its movement, its behavior, collisions, all done here. And it just basically runs through all the methods that are required for whatever state you're in, like a boss fight or whatever. There's also a pause. I didn't mention, yeah, you could pause the game. You have the menu all done in the main class, HUD, movement all done here. And collisions, I realize in hindsight that there's an easier way to do collisions with a method that returns true or false if there's collision. I did it in separate if statements and it just compares x, y values. I know it could be more efficient, but yeah. And it basically just goes through every array list of every object and it just calculates collisions. The ball is based off of 2 vectors. This is the beach ball in the Kahoot fight. Breakable walls, they're different images. Player bullets, the different bosses each have their own class. Oh yeah, so this is my partner's. It's complete spaghetti code. I'm sorry, but like it's really difficult to read. Projectiles, the Kahoot boss, level editor, the system that calculates melee and also draws it. That took like a week to do to make it like a smooth animation. This same particle class I use in basically every one of my games because I use the exact same particle effect. This is actually unused. I don't know why it's still in here. Player movement, if like, the player collision, shooting inputs, dashing, looking around. The player is actually drawn with basic shapes, just basic polygons built into processing. So every frame of every animation is actually hand coded with like individual coordinates for every polygon. Oh, that was horrible. It took so long. I would use, if I was good at animation and GIFs, I would use those, but randomly generating the stars, teleporter. Oh, as to how the bosses work, it runs if its health isn't 0 and the game isn't paused. What it does is it randomly picks something to do based off of its phase. So if it's in phase 1, it follows the player and it runs that method. If it's in phase 2, it randomly picks a behavior and then it completes that behavior, right? follows the player, shoots at the player for 30 frames. It shields itself and moves slowly. And then you segment that into different phases of the fight. Anyway, yeah, so this is how it all works. The entire thing was a total of like, I'm gonna say 3,000, 4,000 lines. Um, it's this and Emrunner are the only complete games I have, and this was done as a grade 12 project. Between me and my partner, I did the movement of the player, shooting, collisions, and 2 bosses. He did one of the bosses, implementing sound, images, and the level editor. Anyway, that's PNG Rush.